In 1943, British families stored carrots for 8 months, without refrigerators, without electricity, without freezers. Their secret: a brown, dusty material you can buy for $5 at any garden store. And here's the crazy part. This method actually works better than your modern refrigerator. Think about that for a second. Your refrigerator costs $2,000, uses electricity 24 hours a day, and your carrots. They last maybe 3 weeks before turning into rubber. But 80 years ago, families with no electricity, no refrigeration, no modern technology, kept the exact same carrots fresh for 8 to 12 months. They came out crisp. They came out firm. They tasted like they were pulled from the ground yesterday. What did they know that we have completely forgotten? During World War II, food was survival. Every vegetable mattered. Every potato was precious. Waste was not an option. So the British government released a series of secret leaflets to every household. These leaflets contained methods that had been passed down for generations, methods that could keep vegetables alive and fresh through an entire winter. Today, I am going to reveal 8 of these methods to you, methods that use one simple material: peat moss, a material that costs almost nothing, a material that is sitting in your local garden store right now, a material that will completely change how you think about food storage. And by the end of this video, you will never look at vegetable storage the same way again. Let us begin. Number 1, the layered box method. The first method is the foundation of everything else. It is called the layered box method, and it is the most common technique that World War II families used to store their root vegetables. Here's how it works. You take a wooden box, or a plastic bin, or any container with some depth. You place a layer of damp peat moss at the bottom, about 2 to 3 inches deep. Then you place your vegetables on top: carrots, beets, turnips, parsnips, whatever you have. But here is the critical rule. The vegetables must not touch each other, not even a little bit. If 2 carrots touch, moisture gets trapped between them, and that moisture creates rot, so you space them out, 1 inch apart at minimum. Then you cover them with another layer of damp peat moss, another 2 to 3 inches, and you repeat. Layer of vegetables, layer of peat moss, layer of vegetables, layer of peat moss, until the box is full. Now, here's the science behind why this works. Peat moss does something magical. It holds moisture without being wet. It creates a humidity bubble around each vegetable, between 90 and 95% humidity. This is the exact humidity that root vegetables need to stay crisp, to dry and they shrivel, to wet and they rot. Peat moss hits the perfect balance. The 1943 Dig for Victory leaflets from the British Ministry of Agriculture recommended exactly this method. They said vegetables stored this way would keep until May, that is 6 to 8 months of storage. From one simple technique, modern tests confirm this. Lee Valley Tools conducted an experiment and found that carrots stored in damp peat moss for more than 5 months came out perfect. Quote, "Just like the day they were pulled out of the ground, hard not withered, and they tasted great because they were still alive and growing." End quote. Still alive and growing. After 5 months in a box of peat moss, your refrigerator cannot do that. Number 2, the sand and peat combination. The second method improves on the first. It is called the sand and peat combination, and it was used when families wanted extra weight to keep vegetables stable. Pure peat moss is very light. Sometimes vegetables shift around inside. They bump into each other. They create contact points where rot can start. So World War II families mixed peat moss with sand. A 50-50 ratio, half peat moss, half sand. The sand added weight and stability. The peat moss maintained moisture. Together, they created the perfect storage medium. The British Ministry of Agriculture actually preferred sand in their official guidance. They wrote that root vegetables are best stored in boxes between layers of sand, but they also noted that if sand is difficult to obtain, finely sifted ashes or fairly dry earth may be substituted. The 50-50 mix gives you the best of both worlds: the moisture retention of peat moss, the stability of sand. And it is easier to work with than pure sand because it is lighter. Here is a tip that the old-timers knew. When you use this combination, the sand should be slightly damp, not wet, not dripping, just barely moist to the touch. If you squeeze a handful and water drips out, it is too wet. If it feels completely dry, it is too dry. You want it to hold together when squeezed but crumble easily when released. Storage time with this method: 6 to 8 months easily. Some families reported keeping carrots until the following spring harvest. Number 3. The barrel method. The third method is for larger harvests. It is called the barrel method, and it was essential for families who grew their own victory gardens. During World War II, the British government encouraged every family to grow vegetables. They called it Dig for Victory. Millions of families planted gardens, and suddenly they had more vegetables than they knew what to do with. The barrel method solved this problem. You take a large barrel or drum. Wooden barrels were common then. Today, you can use a large plastic garbage bin or a metal drum. You line the bottom with 4 to 6 inches of damp peat moss. Then you add your vegetables in a single layer. Then more peat moss, then more vegetables. You keep layering until the barrel is full. The key difference from the box method is scale. A single barrel can hold 50 to 100 pounds of vegetables. 1 barrel of carrots, 1 barrel of beets, 1 barrel of potatoes, and your family has food for the entire winter. Appalachian families used this method for generations. They would store the barrels in their root cellars, underground rooms that naturally stayed between 33 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, vegetables essentially go into hibernation. They stop growing, they stop aging, they just wait. The Appalachian tradition recommended checking the barrels once a month. You open the lid, you smell for any rot. If one vegetable has gone bad, you remove it immediately. One rotten carrot can spread to everything around it within days, but if you catch it early, the rest stays perfect. Storage time with the barrel method: 8 to 12 months. Some families stored root vegetables from October to the following August. Number 4. The clamp method. The fourth method does not even need a container. It is called the clamp method, and it was the traditional technique used by British farmers for centuries before World War II. A clamp is basically an outdoor pile of vegetables protected by layers of insulation. Here is how you build one. You find a spot on high ground, somewhere water will drain away. You dig a shallow depression, just a few inches deep. You line the bottom with a thick layer of straw, 6 inches at minimum. Then you pile your vegetables in a pyramid shape, like a small mountain. Potatoes work best for this method. Carrots and beets can also be clamped, but they need to be completely dry first. Once your pyramid is built, you cover it with a thick layer of peat moss, 4 to 6 inches. This creates the humidity barrier. Then you add a layer of straw on top, another 6 inches. This provides insulation against frost. Finally, you cover everything with a layer of soil. This keeps the rain out and adds more insulation. The 1943 Dig for Victory leaflets gave specific instructions for clamping. They warned that large supplies may be clamped like potatoes, provided the roots are thoroughly dry, but the clamps should be shallow and not too large. The reason is ventilation. A clamp that is too large will trap heat in the center. That heat causes rot. The genius of the clamp method is that it uses the earth itself as your refrigerator. The ground stays at a constant temperature, around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to preserve vegetables, warm enough to prevent freezing. Storage time with the clamp method: 6 to 8 months. British farmers would build their clamps in October and open them in April or May. Number 5. The cellar heap method. The fifth method is the simplest of all. It is called the cellar heap method, and it requires nothing more than a cool basement and some peat moss. The British Ministry of Agriculture described this method clearly. They wrote that root vegetables may be piled in heaps and covered with sand on the floor of the shed or cellar. That is it. No boxers, no barrels, no digging. Just a pile of vegetables on the floor, covered with peat moss. Here is how to do it properly. You sweep your basement or cellar floor clean. You lay down a bed of peat moss, about 3 to 4 inches thick. You pile your vegetables on top, carrots in one heap, beets in another, potatoes in a third. You keep different vegetables separate because they have different storage needs. Then you cover each heap with more peat moss, enough to completely bury the vegetables. 4 to 6 inches of covering. The critical factor is temperature. The ministry specified that a storage temperature between 33 degrees Fahrenheit and 38 degrees Fahrenheit is the most suitable. Most basements in older homes naturally stay within this range during winter. If your basement is too warm, this method will not work as well. The advantage of the cellar heap method is access. You can reach into the pile anytime and grab what you need. You do not have to dig through boxes or open barrels. Just push aside the peat moss, grab a carrot, and cover it back up. Storage time. The ministry said, if treated correctly, all will keep well until May. That is 6 to 7 months from a simple pile on your floor. Number 6. The upright celery method. The sixth method is specifically for celery, and it is brilliant in its simplicity. Celery is one of the hardest vegetables to store. It wilts quickly. It loses its crunch within days. Most people think celery simply cannot be stored long term, but World War II families found a way. The Dig for Victory leaflet number 3 described the method precisely. Quote, celery can be lifted with roots attached. Remove outer leaves, place upright in boxes with several inches of moistened sand or peat moss covering the roots. Remoisten the sand or peat moss as needed. Storage temperature, 33 degrees Fahrenheit to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. End quote. The key insight is keeping the celery upright, with roots attached, and the roots buried in damp peat moss. Think about what this does. The celery is still alive. Its roots are still absorbing moisture from the peat moss. It is essentially still growing, just very slowly, in cold storage. This is why it stays crisp and fresh. You can set this up in any cool basement or garage. A wooden box or plastic bin works fine. Fill the bottom with 4 to 6 inches of damp peat moss. Stand your celery stalks upright, roots down. Pack more peat moss around the roots until they are completely buried. The green tops stick out above the surface. Check the moisture every week or two. If the peat moss feels dry, add water. Not much, just enough to keep it damp. Storage time with this method. The ministry said celery stored this way would last several weeks to 2 or 3 months. That is dramatically longer than the few days you get from a refrigerator. Number 7. The styrofoam cooler method. The 7th method is a modern adaptation. It is called the styrofoam cooler method, also known as the Pedersen method. After the family that popularized it, this method is perfect for people who do not have a root cellar or cool basement. All you need is a large styrofoam cooler and some peat moss. Here is how it works. You get the biggest styrofoam cooler you can find, the kind used for shipping frozen food. You fill the bottom with damp peat moss, 4 inches deep. You add your vegetables in a single layer. Potatoes work especially well with this method. You cover with more peat moss. You keep layering until the cooler is full. Now here's the genius part. You place this cooler in your garage, not inside your heated house, in your unheated garage where the temperature naturally stays cold during winter. The styrofoam insulates against extreme temperature swings. If it gets very cold outside, the styrofoam prevents freezing. If there is a warm day, the styrofoam keeps the inside cool. The result is a stable temperature zone, perfect for vegetable storage. Jerome Stewart documented this method in detail. He found that potatoes stored in a styrofoam cooler with peat moss lasted all winter. They came out firm and ready to plant or eat in the spring. Storage time, 4 to 6 months depending on your climate. In colder regions, even longer. The best part? Styrofoam coolers are free. Just ask at any restaurant or medical supply company. They throw them away constantly. One free cooler plus $5 of peat moss, and you have a vegetable storage system that outperforms any refrigerator. Number 8. The plastic tote stack method. The 8th method is the most practical for modern homes. It is called the plastic tote stack method, and it takes all the wisdom of World War II storage and adapts it for apartments and small spaces. Here is the problem many people face. They do not have a basement, they do not have a root cellar, they do not have space for barrels or outdoor clamps, but they still want to store vegetables long term. The solution is stackable plastic totes. You buy several plastic storage totes, the kind with lids, nothing fancy. You can get them at any dollar store or home improvement center. However many you can fit. A single corner of a cool closet can hold 6 totes. One tip from experienced users: drill a few small holes in the tote lids, just 1 or 2 holes. This allows for air exchange. Without air exchange, vegetables can suffocate and rot faster. Storage time with the plastic tote stack method: 3 to 6 months depending on temperature. Not as long as a true root cellar, but dramatically longer than any refrigerator, and infinitely more practical for modern living. Let me bring this full circle. In 1943, families survived on vegetables stored with nothing but peat moss. They had no refrigerators, no electricity in many cases, no modern technology of any kind, and yet their carrots lasted 8 months. Their beets stayed firm until spring. Their potatoes fed them through the entire winter. Today, we have $2,000 refrigerators. We have climate-controlled everything. We have technology our grandparents could not imagine, and our vegetables rot in 2 weeks. Something went wrong somewhere. These 8 methods I shared today are not just history lessons. They are practical survival skills. They work today exactly as they worked 80 years ago. Peat moss still costs $5 a bag. Root vegetables still keep for months in cold, humid storage. The laws of nature have not changed. What has changed is our knowledge. We forgot. We stopped teaching these skills. We assumed refrigerators solved everything. We were wrong. Now you know better. 1 bag of peat moss, a few plastic totes, a cool spot in your home, and you can store 100 pounds of vegetables for 6 to 12 months. No electricity, no ongoing costs, no complicated equipment. This is how our grandparents survived. This is how World War II families fed themselves through the darkest winters. And now, this knowledge is yours. If this information was valuable to you, consider subscribing. I share survival knowledge like this regularly. Knowledge that has been forgotten. Knowledge that still works. Knowledge that could save your life one day. Leave a comment below. Tell me which method surprised you the most. Was it the clamp method? The upright celery technique? The styrofoam cooler hack? I want to know what you found most useful. And share this video with someone who grows their own food. Someone who wants to be more self-reliant. Someone who needs to know that vegetable storage is not complicated. It just requires the right knowledge. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.